Every November 5th, the United Kingdom lights up in celebration, but for 4 centuries, they have been commemorating the darkness that nearly consumed them. In 1605, a group of Catholic extremists devised a meticulously planned act of vengeance that would have made the British Parliament vanish in a cloud of smoke. The arsenal was colossal: 36 barrels of gunpowder, enough to level the entire heart of London, hidden beneath the foundations of Westminster. If detonated, the blast wouldn't just kill King James I, it would have shattered the future of the monarchy and permanently derailed English democracy. The fate of the entire nation hung on a single whispered secret. This secret rested with Guy Fawkes, an experienced soldier and fanatic, determined to light the fuse precisely at midnight. He waited alone in the cramped Undercroft, anticipating the perfect moment of chaos. But in the late hours of November 4th, 1605, just hours before the scheduled destruction, a royal inspector, acting on the pretext of a cryptic, anonymous warning, stumbled upon Fawkes. He was there, surrounded by over a ton of explosives, the match ready in his hand. Who wrote that single, pivotal letter that saved the king? Was it an act of genuine conscience? Or was the crown's intelligence already watching, setting a calculated trap to justify centuries of persecution? What does this night, celebrated 400 years later, truly reveal about the dark secrets of state power? This night reveals that state power is, above all, fear. In the early hours of November 5th, 1605, the clock marked not just the start of a new day, but the imminent end of an era. In the damp tunnels beneath the House of Lords lay 36 barrels of gunpowder, about a ton of explosives, capable of turning the heart of the British government to ash. The detonation would not only kill King James I and his family, but would pulverize the nation's political and religious structure. This was no simple act of terrorism. It was the most ambitious coup attempt in English history, planned by Robert Catesby and executed by explosives expert Guy Fawkes. But the near-perfect plan collapsed hours before. Why? A letter, an anonymous warning, delivered to a Catholic lord loyal to the crown, triggered the alert. When the guards descended, they found Fawkes, cloak drawn and matches in hand, ready for martyrdom. The failure was minimal, but the result was gigantic. Before 1605, religious persecution was already severe. After 1605, it became institutionalized and brutal. For the next half-century, Bonfire Night turned into the perfect state excuse for repression, solidifying the image of the Catholic as the eternal internal enemy. 4 centuries later, Guy Fawkes Night is not just a celebration of fireworks and vigilance. It is the representation of how the official narrative, based on a real, terrifying threat, can be co-opted. What then is the dark secret that echoes 400 years later? It is not the gunpowder, but the lesson the state learned that night: the power to transform a devastating failure into a symbol of triumph and absolute control. And what happened to the conspirators, tortured and executed in public squares? The next segment takes us to the dungeon of the Tower of London, where the true meaning of loyalty was extracted on the scaffold. If the scaffold was the end, the beginning of this dark story resided in the deep frustration and despair that gnawed at the soul of Catholic England. King James I ascended to the throne in 1603, promising tolerance, a fragile olive branch after the fierce persecutions under Elizabeth I. But that promise was a lie, rapidly evaporating as the weight of the crown settled upon him. By 1604, the king had tightened the screws, enforcing and even escalating the penal laws, transforming mere faith into a high crime. Catholics were subject to crippling recusancy fines, equivalent to several years' wages for the average worker, simply for refusing to attend Anglican services. In this climate of institutionalized betrayal, where justice was denied and survival became an act of defiance, the possibility of peaceful reform died. Out of this desperation emerged Robert Catesby, the charismatic, privileged, and dangerously radical leader of the conspiracy. Catesby was not merely looking for freedom to worship. He sought divine vengeance and the complete reversal of the Protestant ascendancy. To him, the entire structure of the state, king, lords, and commons, was corrupt and had to be obliterated in a single cataclysmic act. He recruited a core group of disillusioned gentlemen, but the success of the plot depended on one singular asset: Guy Fawkes. Fawkes was an English soldier of fortune, hardened by service in the Catholic Spanish armies of the Netherlands. He brought military discipline, expertise in explosives, and, crucially, a face unknown to London authorities. He was the fuse waiting for the spark. The plan was terrifying in its simplicity and scope. While James I, the entire royal family, and the principal figures of the government gathered for the state opening of Parliament on November 5th, 1605, Fawkes would detonate the immense cache of explosives smuggled into a rented cellar directly beneath the House of Lords. The plotters managed to secure 36 barrels of gunpowder. Historians estimate this was enough to not only shatter Westminster Palace, but potentially affect structures a kilometer away. This was not just political assassination. It was an attempt at decapitating the entire political body of a nation, a catastrophic strike unmatched in history until centuries later. By the end of October 1605, the barrels were covered with wood and coal, ready to be ignited. Fawkes took up his vigil in the dark, silent cellar, the very heart of the British monarchy resting precariously above him. The countdown had begun, and the fate of England hung on the absolute silence of 13 men. But Catesby, in his zeal, forgot that absolute secrecy is the first victim of fanaticism. Unknown to the conspirators hiding in the shadows, a small, anonymous letter had already been dispatched, promising to shatter their perfect night of fire and change everything. That anonymous missive, dispatched in secrecy, promised to shatter their perfect night of fire and change everything. But for the conspirators, November 5th, 1605, dawned like any other, cloaked in the fog of absolute certainty. They had done their part. Now, the fuse waited only for Guy Fawkes's touch. The letter, delivered to Lord Monteagle on October 26th, was the first fracture in the meticulously planned edifice of treason. It was a vague, cryptic warning. They shall not see who hurts them. Yet in the hands of King James I, a monarch obsessed with theology and self-preservation, vagueness became deadly precision. James I, unlike many of his ministers, immediately saw past the general threat of rebellion and focused on the physical mechanics of the attack. He decreed the search should be conducted subtly, waiting until the very last moment to catch the culprits red-handed. This deliberate delay, born of the king's intellectual arrogance and strategic patience, turned the suspense into agony. For 9 tense days, the fate of the monarchy and the hundreds scheduled to attend the state opening of Parliament rested on a single, ambiguous paragraph. In the days leading up to November 5th, Fawkes and Catesby went through their final rituals. Fawkes, alias John Johnson, secured the final layer of kindling around the 36 barrels of gunpowder. Fawkes retreated into the darkness of the cellar, the air thick with dampness and the acrid smell of sulfur. His devotion was absolute. He was ready to become the catalyst for a new Catholic England. But while he waited, convinced of the historical necessity of his action, the king's men were moving. On the night of November 4th, an initial cursory search led by the Earl of Suffolk yielded little. Fawkes was discovered, but he dismissed himself as a simple servant guarding mundane coal supplies. They withdrew. The conspirators breathed a collective sigh of relief, convinced they had fooled the crown. They had not. King James I, still unsettled by the letter's cryptic warning, demanded a second, more thorough sweep. Around midnight, as the city slept and the conspirators awaited the dawn, Sir Thomas Knivet, Justice of the Peace for Westminster, returned with an armed detachment. This time, Knivet was looking for something specific, the source of the sudden blow. The cellar door, previously guarded by Fawkes, was now slightly ajar. Knivet burst in, lamp raised. There stood Guy Fawkes, utterly unsurprised, clad in cloak and boots. He did not resist. Upon searching him, Knivet found the evidence that cemented his identity and the scale of the plot: a slow match, touchwood, and several tinderboxes. The subsequent uncovering of the 36 barrels confirmed the greatest act of attempted regicide in British history. Fawkes was immediately dragged out, resisting only verbally, maintaining his defiance even under arrest. He was taken directly to the Tower of London. The immediate aftermath was chaos tempered by state efficiency. Robert Catesby and the remaining conspirators fled towards the Midlands, attempting to incite a rebellion that never materialized. The authorities tracked them ruthlessly. Just 2 days later, they were cornered at Holbeck House in Staffordshire. The final confrontation was swift and bloody. Catesby, the mastermind, died resisting arrest, arguably escaping the public humiliation and prolonged torture that awaited Fawkes. The failure of the plot was monumental, but the institutional reaction was the true turning point, the dark secret promised by the title. The capture of Fawkes, deemed a victory for divine providence and King James I's unique wisdom, immediately justified unprecedented measures. Torture, generally reserved for treason and prohibited in ordinary criminal cases, was personally authorized by the king. James I penned a note permitting the use of the gentler tortures first, and so on to the uttermost. Fawkes, despite his initial resilience, eventually yielded under the rack, revealing the names of his accomplices. For the state, the failed plot was not just a threat averted, it was the ultimate propaganda tool. It transformed the inherent Catholic threat from a theoretical problem into a proven existential danger. Parliament immediately passed the Popish Recusants Act of 1606, which imposed draconian fines, barred Catholics from the legal profession and military, and mandated an oath of allegiance that explicitly condemned the Pope's authority. This act codified centuries of official discrimination. 400 years later, the lesson of Guy Fawkes' Night is not merely that treason failed. It is that the state successfully weaponized the public fear it generated. The Bonfire Night, instituted by Parliament shortly after the plot, became an annual mandatory celebration of state vigilance. Every year, Englishmen were forced to burn an effigy of the conspirator, ritually reinforcing the narrative of the wicked Catholic versus the vigilant crown. This ritual of manufactured memory ensured that the dark shadow of sectarian division and pervasive state surveillance, cemented by 36 barrels of gunpowder that never detonated, lingered over Britain for centuries to come. The flames that should have consumed the Parliament instead consumed the freedom of an entire religious minority. But the question remains, who sent that crucial life-saving letter? That sealed envelope was not merely a piece of paper, it was a note of betrayal. History records it as the Monteagle warning, delivered anonymously just days before the scheduled detonation. But who sent it? Was it Lord Monteagle himself, trying to expose the plot while preserving plausible deniability? Or perhaps his sister, married to one of the conspirators, driven by fear and conscience? The Crown immediately seized the ambiguity. By midnight on November 5th, the tunnels were breached, and there, amid the towering barrels of gunpowder, was Guy Fawkes, clutching a slow-burning match. The king was saved, but the nation was forever changed. The immediate aftermath was brutal and swift. Fawkes, interrogated by royal officials, including the infamous practice of the rack, quickly revealed the names of his co-conspirators. Robert Catesby, the true architect, was hunted down and killed, defiant to the end. The subsequent trials were not exercises in justice, but theatrical displays of royal propaganda, designed to solidify James III's divine right and paint Catholicism as intrinsically treasonous. But the most profound change was institutional. If persecution had previously been inconsistent, it now became the law of the land, an iron fist wrapped in parliamentary velvet. In 1606, Parliament enacted the Oath of Allegiance, forcing Catholics to renounce the Pope's temporal authority over the king, an impossible choice for the devout. Recusancy fines were intensified, making poverty a legal certainty for those who refused to attend Anglican services. For more than 2 centuries, Catholics were legally marginalized, barred from voting, attending universities, or holding public office. The true secret of Bonfire Night is not the saving of a king, but the birth of an apparatus of state surveillance and systemic oppression. Consider the data. The state used the failure of one terrorist act to justify generations of religious apartheid. This parallel is terrifying. Much like modern events that birthed the Patriot Act and global surveillance structures, 1605 provided the perfect license for the state to operate perpetually under the banner of fear. Every November 5th, when the effigy of Guy Fawkes burns, the nation celebrates not just survival, but the triumph of state vigilance over dissent. It is a yearly ritual of division, a mandated memory that served to remind Catholics of their permanent status as second-class citizens. The dark legacy is this: The failure of the Gunpowder Plot ensured the success of what King James most desired: the perpetual justification for tyranny disguised as national security. 400 years later, the fires still rage. But are they a flame of memory or a flame of sustained prejudice? The failure of the Gunpowder Plot was not merely the end of a rebellion, but the immediate genesis of a new era of systemic fear and control. King James III's response was swift and brutal. The persecution of Catholics did not diminish. It was codified. The penal laws were fiercely strengthened, denying Catholics civil rights and access to public office for more than 2 centuries, deeply entrenching sectarian divides across the British Isles. But the true dark secret promised by the title lies in the annual flame of Armagh bonfire night. King James III decreed that November 5th would forever be a day of joyful thanksgiving for the conspiracy's failure. What began as gratitude for royal survival quickly became a potent tool of state propaganda. 400 years later, the bonfires burn not just to remember the near miss, but to reinforce a singular, stark lesson. The power of the state when threatened will transform the enemy into a perpetual icon of public mockery and deterrence. The yearly burning of the Guy Fawkes effigy is a timeless warning about the cost of dissent and the institutionalization of victory. We are, in effect, celebrating the triumph of surveillance over revolution. This was just one of the days that shaped our world. To not miss the next defining historical event, we will uncover here on the channel. Subscribe now to The Day That Changed Everything and turn on notifications. What other day would you like to see covered? Comment below.